Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Untangle Tech Talk series. Today we'll be demonstrating our captive portal application and showcasing how you can manage all of your bring your own devices connecting to your network. My name is Shannon Miles. I'm part of the product marketing team here, and I'll be your host today. I also have with us John Coffin, who's our director of QA, and he'll be going through this presentation and demonstrating all of the new features that are now available in Captive Portal with our new version 13. And with that, I will pass it over to John. Oh, sorry, one more. Just a few housekeeping rules before I pass this over to John. If you do select to use a phone, you will need to use the access code that's provided. You can use your computer speakers as well. And as always, we'll be answering questions on the back end. So you can submit your questions through the Q&A box on the right-hand side, and we'll be answering those throughout the webinar, and John will be answering them as well too. If we don't get to your question, you can always email us at sales@untangle.com or support@untangle.com. And just a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to share this or rewatch at your convenience. And before I move on, this is a highly technical webinar, so if you're not familiar with Untangle and our solutions or networking concepts, then this may not be the best webinar for you. We do have a 101 webinar series that covers more higher level topics, so you can check all those out, our upcoming webinars on our website. And now I will pass it over to John. Go ahead.
Thanks everyone for joining us, and thanks Shannon for the introduction. Kind of go over Captive Portal, which is probably one of our most popular free apps for the Untangle device. A lot of reasons to use them. A lot of people want to have a legal notice as they get on their network or use their internet, saying the network's monitored and so forth. A lot of people use it as a way of identifying traffic. You have a lot of machines coming in and out of your network. It's not really simple to identify them directly. So you can identify the traffic either by having some kind of login or people using their own Facebook, Google authentication, and so forth. Once users are identified, it makes it a lot easier to limit connections based on who they are and what their traffic is doing. So with that, we'll kind of go into some of the different areas of Captive Portal. Just want to kind of bring up, we actually added quite a bit of features to Captive Portal in 13.1, which is rolling out shortly. It's actually released, and we're just rolling out to our existing customers. The download pages should have 13.1 available. One of the things that we had kind of a hack to get Google Authentication working. Of course, Google has closed that particular method based on some of the things they had. So we've actually implemented their OAuth authentication, which is the preferred way that Google and Facebook recommend, using their Google and Facebook logins to identify a user and allow them traffic. You can also use this with Office 365. So if you have a login for that, you can identify users based on their Office 365 login. Another great feature that we added, you can redirect to the host name instead of the local IP. This was a problem for a lot of people going forward. If the Captive Portal, of course, uses the internal IP address of the interface they're connecting. That, of course, is IP does not have a certificate. So if you're going to a secured site from like HTTPS, you would not be able to, you would get a certificate error from the browser, and some people were very hesitant about continuing. Now you can actually redirect them to your Untangle hostname if you have that selected. And if you have a certificate, a valid certificate, from authorized location, you can actually have eliminate that browser certificate error that you get, because now you have a host name which matches the certificate. Pretty useful thing. You can find out more about the changes in the URL below, which is on our wiki. has all the change logs, and specifically to Captive Portal, I put the sub address for that. Now let's get into the practical use of Captive Portal. Again, allows you to use whether a legal notice or just a welcome message. Pretty easy to do. Let's bring up an instance of our Captive Portal. Let's see here. One set up. So here's our Captive Portal application. We have it installed in apps. So let's take a look at it. First of all, we're going to need a capture rule. Built in, by default, it captures all non-WAN interfaces. So anything that's not a WAN, checked WAN, is going to be captured. And you can limit this. Maybe you have like a guest wireless network, if you want people to log in. You can just select that particular interface and so forth. You have the choices of what you're going to do on your Captive Portal. Here you can put any kind of message you like. For example, say, click continue, just say, welcome to our network, something like that. Go ahead and save that. And so now if we look at our Captive Portal, you'll see it provides the message that we just typed in. Really simple, just kind of keeps track of that people know that the network is being used and so forth. And you can track the IPs of the people and where they go. So if I click continue, I head to the page I originally went to. And so then I can look at my hosts, and you can see it's got the name of the machine that's behind there and so forth. Not really useful. It's kind of a basic web page that for Captive Portal, keep track of the IP of who authenticated and what they want to do. So at that point, it's just, if you're looking for a really basic idea, just to give people a notice of, be careful what you do on our network and so forth. It's being monitored. That's great. The next step is actually to identify the users. And there's two ways of really doing that. You can do that with a local directory, which is built in. You can use a Microsoft Active Directory services if you have local users and you're using Active Directories. You can set up a Radius server and have logins on that. Or you can use the OAuth. And I'll just show you kind of the basics of that. So in this case, I'm going to use a basic login. And I can take a look at the page, see what it's going to look like. Here it is. Oops. Got to save it first. Now I can see the preview, and it's just got a username, password. I want to, excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and just use local directory that's built into the Untangle, just for the demo. I'm going to go ahead and add a user. Save that. And I'm going to go back to my page. So I have my local directory. I'm going to save that. So now let's go ahead and log out my user. And let's go back to here. So once again, I get my Captive Portal because I logged this particular machine off. Now it requires a login. So I've given this person their login. So I'll go ahead and type in the username, password. And again, I'm allowed in. What's more interesting is if we look at our host, we'll see now that the username has been filled in with the login that they use. So again, it's easier to identify. You can create rules. For example, let's go ahead and install firewall. So I can do things like, let's say a particular user I just want to block at a certain point. I'll just say username is test, and I can go ahead and block that person based on the name. Or I can block certain applications based on the username. And then that way you can give different rights to different people based on the application that you're on. Sorry, depending on the user that logged in. So let's go ahead and log this user out. And I can do the same thing using a Radius server, or I can use Active Directory, or I can use a combination of Active Directory and Radius and local directory, so you have more and more options. One of the more unique features now, especially for a lot of places that are using, for example, Google Mail as their corporate mail or their school mail, or if they just maybe want to have some contact with the user, like you're running a cafe, maybe you want to have them opt in to some kind of just liking your particular store or something like that on Facebook, you can go ahead and do the any OAuth provider. So I'll go ahead and save that. And we're going to log my user out again. Let's see here. It's already logged out. So I'll go ahead and go back. So now we come in with this login. Now I can choose any of these, or I can go ahead to my authentication and limit them to, for example, only Google. In this case, I'm running kind of a public cafe, and I just want them to go ahead and use whatever they have available. So I'll go ahead and log in with my Facebook. Oh, sorry, it was already saved. I need to create a rule. So I'm going to start my private to log this user out. Go back. Another window. One problem with when you're testing this out is that a lot of times the browsers will cache things. Okay, so I have my login here. Go ahead and click on Facebook. Whichever one you select, that person will be allowed to go to either Google Authentication or Facebook Authentication or Microsoft. So they're allowed to go here, but they won't be able to browse other places. Here the person sees I'm directly on Facebook, so I feel okay about giving my information on this. It's not like I'm logging in with my Facebook account on someone else's Untangle. This is actually on Facebook itself. So I'll go ahead and log in. Let's see if you type the password in right. So now I'm going ahead and I've gone through the Captive Portal using my Facebook account because I've received an OAuth token from Facebook. The Untangle received a token saying, yes, this person has allowed Untangle, this particular Untangle, to have access to a token which allows the person to be identified. So then if I look at my session, you'll notice my username now is the Facebook email address that I use to log in. And again, I can use this information to, check out who's going on my reports. Let's go ahead and we can look at my user events. So you can see how Tom is he logged into Facebook, and then he can go into different events. And if I install, for example, web filter, say I'm going to go to Google. Now, so I can look at my filter events. Sorry about that. So if I look at my events, again, I can see this user, I can tell where they've been going and what websites they've been going to. So it's really handy to see exactly where they're going. And then you can also direct traffic based on that. You can block out certain things. For example, if you're running like a coffee shop and you don't want people watching movies on your internet, you can block streaming video just based, and then maybe allow certain users to do that. Maybe there's someone in particular that they want to do, and so forth. So that's really kind of the basics of getting a username filled in automatically and restricting your access to your internet. One other thing, if you're running SSL Inspector, of course, the device that is on your network, in order to use SSL Inspector, needs to have the server root certificate installed. Captive Portal can detect if the root certificate is not installed, and then it provides links for the user to install those directly. For Windows, we actually have an installer which installs the root certificate in the correct places, so SSL Inspector works correctly. For everything else, we do have a manual install for those. Makes it pretty easy to install. Macs are pretty much, you download it, you right-click on it, install, and it works. For Windows, we actually have an installer for those to work. It's definitely, there's a little more problems if people are bringing, for example, mobile phones to get the certificate installed. But this gives a way of blocking that, and if you want to require that you have SSL Inspector for that traffic, you can have them where it's required that they click on the installer. You also can make it not required, but just recommended. So if we go here to Captive Portal, we go to the Captive Portal page, we can go ahead and check to see if it has a certificate and show a warning when it's not detected, and we can also require. So unless you have the certificate, you can't continue past Captive Portal. A couple other features while we're here. This is use the host name instead of the IP. Again, the use for this is if you have a valid certificate on your Untangle and your Untangle uses the host name, which is right here under, let's go ahead and config and networking, host name. Want to make sure this has a valid host name, and also that you're using the host name for qualified events. Those combinations with the certificate will allow you to, instead of seeing an IP address, so let's log out this user so we can demo how that works. So again, when I click on here, you'll notice this is an IP address. You can't have a valid certificate for a local IP address. So if you use host name and you have the certificate installed on your Untangle, it will show the correct host name and the certificate, so you don't get an error when you're doing HTTPS. A couple things to do like that. Some other things. Some advanced pages. So let's just quickly go to this. So if we go to the wiki under custom pages for the Captive Portal, we have a ton of examples on how to do special kind of pages, hotel login, custom pages. If you want to charge for your internet, we have a PayPal account. does require a little bit of work to integrate those pages based on exactly what you want to do, but these are great samples of what you can do with custom pages, and it does help. If you do have problems getting the custom pages work, please post to the forums. We definitely want to help you on that and get that going. There's just a ton of different pages here. As you can see, there are several on there. Any big questions on this?
Yeah, we have quite a number of questions, John. When allowing concurrent login, can you limit the number of devices that are connecting from one user?
No, I currently, you can't limit that. So either they're connecting with one device or they're connecting with as many devices as they want.
Okay, great. There was a question about how most websites now are HTTPS and how Captive Portal only works if SSL Inspector is installed. Can you kind of go over that?
Right. SSL Inspector is not required anymore if you want to prevent the Captive Portal SSL certificate error that you're going to get. Again, you do have to use the host name instead of the IP, and you do have to have a valid certificate for the host name on your server. As far as browsing pages and so forth of HTTPS, it is possible to get an idea of what your customers are going to simply by, there's something called SNI, which WebFilter does inspect. It's under here, and it's checked by default. We will look at the SNI certificate. For example, just looking at the ones I use, these are all SSL encoded pages, but I do know the domain that they're going for. I won't know the sub parts of the URL, but I will know the domain. So you can get information of what sites they're going to, even though they're using HTTPS. You just can't know the subdirectories that they're going to. So that is the difference.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. There's a question if you can use Captive Portal for a network of students, but then also have a different network for businesses that have a bypass from requiring a login.
Sure. Probably one of the easiest ways to do that, there's two ways. Either you can go into your Captive Portal. Let's go over here. And you would have some kind of authentication, whether it's a Google login, if your school uses Google Apps, or you can do an Active Directory, and then use Policy Manager to decide on the login, based on the login and what group they're in, you can decide which type of filtering they're going to have. Obviously, for students, you're going to filter more, but if they have maybe a business login, you can filter that way. The other thing you can do is, again, using Policy Manager, depending on which interface you're using. For example, I can change this and just say this is going to be my student's Captive Portal. I'm going to say that's only on my internal interface. My business users are going to come in through my different interface, different NIC on the thing. So you have different wireless things hooked up to different NICs on the Untangle, and then select if they have Captive Portal, if they don't have Captive Portal, and also what rules based on where they come in. So you can have different policies based on how they come in or on different logins.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, someone's asking if they can use Captive Portal with a D-Link AP over my LAN.
You could use the D-Link as a access point, and then have that. The key for Captive Portal is, and of course this is in general for Untangle, all traffic must be in line with it. So whatever traffic is coming through that D-Link, if you want to use Captive Portal, You just need to have the traffic go through the untangle. That's the key.
All right, there's a question about the Google authentication. Can you whitelist a certain domain, for example, email, and blacklist all others?
At this point, you can't decide which untangles you can, but you can do it by, they were able to log in, but then you could go into your firewall and put a rule like, for example, add condition, and you can do a username, and you can do something like only allow people from this domain, for example. And you would add a pass for that, and then below it, you would add a block. So it's always the first rule that gets out. Let's say pass. So I want them to pass my domain. So I'll go ahead and put that in. And then what I want to do is just add a block all for everything else. Just say, and then what we're going to do is we're going to put, really it doesn't matter the username. So we can just condition, and we can just say block. So this is a block all condition. So once someone logs in, if they have a username that contains my domain, they'll go ahead and get through. If they come in and log in with a domain that's not one of mine, it'll be blocked. So that's a way you can blacklist it. Any other questions?
Yeah, just a bunch just came in. Will this work for apps? So for instance, a Facebook app on the iPhone or an Android?
It doesn't work for an app per se, but Capture Portal does block those apps from going through. So the login is actually an OAuth feature from Facebook. So it's actually a page on Facebook that they log into. It won't be anything relative to those apps. So when you go ahead and try to browse the internet on your mobile phone, you'll be caught by the Captive Portal page, and you select whether it's Google, Facebook, or Office, and you select Facebook. It will take you to the Facebook OAuth login page, which is hosted by Facebook or Google.
Thanks, John. Someone's asking if you can have a login page with both local and the OAuth options.
At this point, no, because it's the way OAuth does, it's a very particular code. So you can have any OAuth or a specific OAuth, or you can have any of the directory connector types, which is Active Directory, Radius, or local. So you really have to choose between the two.
Okay. Thanks, John. Let's see. Is there a way to prevent internal users to access the Untangle IP address?
Yeah, that's they can't prevent that at all because one, the block page comes from the Untangle itself, so it doesn't do any good to block that. Honestly, the best thing you do is have a decent password. Untangle's been around a long time. We have not found an occurrence of someone hacking into Untangle because they found some exploit. It's usually very weak passwords written on the bottom of keyboards, things like that. So there's really no reason why to prevent the users from accessing the IP of the Untangle. They will not be able to get past it. So, and there's no way to present a block page and so forth to the users if you're blocking access to the Untangle itself.
All right. Someone's asking if someone is using a VPN VPN anonymizer, will this still work?
Yeah, so the captive portal blocks all traffic. It doesn't care what it is. Um, once they authenticate, they can use the VPN after that point. Then there's things you can do. If you want to prevent people from using anonymizers after they have already logged in, you can do things. For example, add application control and use web filter to block anonymizers. Use application control to cut down on any VPN services, things like that.
All right, I think we've answered most questions. One just came in. Will Google Authentication still work with two-factor authentication enabled for the user?
They do. They will have to, of course, authenticate their second way. So it's a two-part process
right.
for that.
All right, a couple more coming in. Is there a way to block wireless users from accessing LAN resources?
Sure can. It's pretty easy to do. So what you do, and I've done this many times, it's really common. By default, all LAN interfaces are able to communicate with them. So if you want to block that, what you do is just go to your network and just go to, I'm not seeing it here, filter rules right here. And I would add a filter rule, for example, something like separate LANs. And then I would just add a condition. We'll say the destination interface. Let's say I have my corporate network on the internal. So that's the destination. And I'm going to add another condition and say my source interface. Let's say my guest interface is this one. So I just create a rule and I put this for block. This will block any access from my guest network to my corporate network in one simple thing. And just click done and you're ready.
All right, I think that's about it. If we want to, let's see, as John mentioned, we have the wiki that provides a lot of useful information in terms of how you can set up Captive Portal for whatever your requirements are. I think he mentioned the forums as well. The forums is our open community, so you can post your question or comments in terms of what you're trying to do. Other Untangle users can respond, as well as we have our full engineering team on there as well, so they will be glad to help answer any questions that you have. We have our YouTube channel, which John mentioned a lot of different applications, so if you're not familiar with those, you can check all those out on our YouTube channel. Those are kind of deep dives as well. I'm going to how to set those up and how to customize them for your network. If this was confusing to you and you have no idea how to set this up, we do offer professional services for installation, configuration, customization, anything you need. You can contact us today at sales@untangle.com. We're glad to help. Next slide, John. All right, so yeah, we're just wrapping up, seeing if any more questions come in. Not yet. As always, we're here. We want to help assist making sure your network is secure. Please contact us. There were a few people asking about how Untangle works, so please email us at sales@untangle.com. We'd be glad to give you a demo. This was a very technical demo. We'd love to give you a more higher level overview of how Untangle can work at your network. If you have a support question that we didn't get to, if you had a very specific problem, please just submit, email us at support@untangle.com. They'll be happy to assist. We have the wiki and the forums. Our next webinars coming up, 101, which is what I mentioned earlier, is our more higher level webinar series. It's how NG Firewall can help your state and local governments. And then we're going to go over some, later in October and November, do some more tech talks around web filter and reports. 13.1 was released earlier this month. If you did not get that announcement, someone just came and asked about that. So you can, if you didn't get that notification and you haven't gotten the upgrade, you can send an email to support@untangle.com with your UID number to get that upgrade. And let's see, I think that's all the questions that came in. So thanks, John, for the great demo. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.